Hi, my name is Nancy Fulton, and I run the Nancy Fulton Meetups, which provides training and technical support to writers, producers, um, actors, and other creative professionals working here in the entertainment industry. And this particular event is the first one that I'm doing via Zoom, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to use Zoom to be able to do technical presentations that require me to show people how to use stuff on computers, because I think people need a lot of technical skills, and this is probably the easiest and fastest way to provide them. When I do live events, I teach people how to do things in the classroom, but there's just one giant screen, and if you don't take notes very quickly, it doesn't. It's not a very satisfying experience for people attending. Whereas if I record presentations using the techniques that I'm using today, I think people will be able to follow the instructions much more easily, and will be able to look back on presentations when they find themselves confused or wondering what to do. So in today's event, we're going to talk about new tools for exploring alternatives, making complex decisions, and finding better collaborative solutions. And the reason I'm doing this particular event is that I think people will find the tools that I'm using very useful for solving a wide variety of problems that creative professionals face every day. Sometimes the questions are somewhat personal, like how do I decide how I'm going to invest my time? How do I how can I figure out what I actually want to do, whether I want to be a writer-producer or I want to be a writer, whether I want to be an actor or whether I want to be an actor-producer, whether or not I should leave a given job, whether I should join a particular project. Other times, the decisions people are making are more business-related. They're questions like, is this guy a really good partner for me? Or is it time for me to end this professional relationship? And finally, as creative professionals, we're always in the business of trying to find better answers to creative questions. For example, we may have a screenplay that is kind of flat, and nothing we do seems to make it better. We've tried adding scenes, we've thrown sex into the second act, and it's just not happening. And a lot of times that's because we aren't understanding enough about the characters, and we need a way to be able to explore those characters in a more efficient way. So this particular set of tools that we're going to talk about today will actually help you solve those kinds of problems much more efficiently. And since I started using this technique, I really find it much easier to make a better decision, and I feel better about the decisions that I make. And people have told me about these kinds of tools. I think people have shown them to me like 15 times, but I never quite understood what the point was. So I think you'll really enjoy using these techniques, and I think you'll enjoy using the tools that I'm demonstrating. So with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is I am going to share the slide set that I'm going to use during this presentation. And I want to mention as I do so that these slides will also be available to professionals. Generally speaking, if you signed up to attend this event, you will have access to these slides. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Present. And so this is, of course, the title of the presentation. Now, the other thing, just to quickly review the objectives for this particular event, the first thing you're going to do is learn how to make more complex decisions more easily. The second thing you're going to learn how to do is find better solutions by discovering more options more quickly. The third thing you're going to learn how to do, which I think is particularly important for people working creatively, is you're going to learn how to make collaborative decisions more efficiently so that you can discuss something with somebody productively or with a team productively, and when all is said and done, you can step back and make the best decision based on all the information provided by the entire team. And finally, you're going to learn how to make creative decisions more easily. Now, the techniques that I'm going to show you in this particular presentation require you to use mind mapping software, which there are lots of different kinds of mind mapping applications. If you were to go onto Google right now and type Google, mind mapping applications, you would find dozens, and lots of them are free. The one that I've got to be very, very fond of recently is a tool that works inside Google Chrome. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to install the Google Chrome browser, which is a browser that you should probably be using anyway. And the reason is that the Google Chrome browser is probably the most secure browser online these days. It's harder to hack than either Safari or Internet Explorer. And it's also faster. It tends to load pages much more quickly. The other nice thing about Google Chrome is kind of like your phone, how you can install apps on your phone. Well, you can install apps inside the Google Chrome browser. And the reason that's cool is it means that whenever you don't have to install any extra software on your computer. You just literally use the tool actually inside the browser. It doesn't put anything really on your local hard disk of any significance. After you've installed the Google Chrome browser, you're going to install the Mind Map app. And you can find the information for that at mindmapmaker.org. And then once you've done that, you're going to launch the Mind Map app. So so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and do exactly what I just described to you, which I'm going to go ahead and launch the Mind Map app. So what I'm going to do is press escape. Now, once you, just to review, once you've actually installed the Google Chrome browser and you've installed the Mind Map app, you're going to find that you can click on Apps and click on the Mind Map button. Now, in addition to the instructions that you're going to get that show you the information on how to create mind maps, I'm also going to include tutorials that review how to install how to install the Mind Map app, and just to make things a little bit easier for you. So, but I think you'll find it's a very straightforward process. It takes just like a couple of minutes. So once you've installed the Mind Map browser, the Mind Map app on your Google browser, you're going to click on Go to Mind Map Maker. And what you're going to see is pretty cool. You're going to see a blank screen, and it's going to have the words Central Idea which is the first node or the first point on your mind map. Now, if I click on the central idea, I can type, for example, the question that I'm interested in answering. So, for example, I could say writer or writer-producer, right? And if I want to, not that I necessarily want to do anything particularly cosmetic at this point, but if I chose to, I could change the border color here to purple, or I could change it to brown. I could make it so it was solid, right? But I usually find I kind of like the yellow color that they pick by default. The next step in the process is just literally to click and drag to create the next point on the mind map. So for example, if I'm trying to decide whether I should be a writer or writer-producer, the place I'm always going to start is by creating, if I have to choose between alternatives, I'm going to create branches to represent the alternatives. So in this branch, I can say writer, benefits, and then I can say writer-producer benefits. Now, what I'm going to do is drag off, and I'm going to write down, make a list of all the things that I like about, the generally speaking, about being just a writer as opposed to being a writer-producer. One, someone else pays the bills. So I have no additional responsibilities. So I'm just going to say no additional responsibility. And at this point, I'm tired of this thing being on the screen, so I'm just going to kill it. No additional responsibility. All I got to do is write. I'll probably be able to write more because I'm not like being distracted by the hassle of actually producing something. I can also say meet other writers, because most of the time, if you're a writer, you might find that you're working in a writer's room or something like that. I'm also going to meet other. I'm going to meet other filmmakers. Right? And then on this side, I can say total control. And I do like being totally in control of things. Right? I can say that I enjoy, I get to hire people. I kind of like hiring people because I get to hire the best, the people that I think are the best people for the job, which is not something you get to do if you're just a writer. Kind of same as a total of control, but a little bit different. I get the lion's share of the revenue, like to the extent that anybody in the cast and crew does, so I get paid more. Of course, on this side, if I become a writer and I get hired by other people, in theory, I might actually get a regular paycheck. I might like that, so regular paycheck. Now, at this point, I find myself starting to think about things I really might hate about being a writer. So I can go ahead and say writer negatives. Can't do anything I want, right? So limits to what I can do, limits to projects I can work on. Right? I can't, if you're gonna make a living from writing and you're gonna write for other people, you're gonna have to write what those other people want, because you're not going to be able to follow any whim that you have when it comes to the projects that you do. Another bad thing is looking for a job all the time, because that's what writers do. Now, as I go ahead and I think back to the writer-producer negatives, I can say raising money, right? And then I can say, because you have to raise money for the projects that you do, actually. Which means debt, equity. So debt means I might have to borrow money to do it, and I'll certainly have to have some sort of cash flow, bank account. And then I can also say dealing with investors. So as I start pulling these things out, it starts to become clearer and clearer and clearer, to me, sort of what my actual choices are and the process of actually writing them down, I find, and the process of being able to separate them this way, I find makes it much easier for me to feel like I really have, by the time I get done with this process, that I've really made a very solid decision. So I want to mention in passing that if I change my mind, I say, I don't know that I'm going to meet more writers and filmmakers this way. I can literally just click on any note and press delete. I'm not I don't have to actually keep it. I can also, if I choose to, because the map's getting too complicated, I can click here and I can actually make things go away for a minute. And I can, if I want, I can use the navigator button, the inspector button, and I can click on any branch, like let's say I just can't deal with this gray color, I can click on writer benefits and see where it says branch color and it looks gray. I can click on the inherit button and I could say, I think this is much more purple. It's a very purple thing. I want to make it a purple thing. And now because I've clicked on inherit, it gets passed on all the way down. Now, it is actually possible to sort of, there's a whole bunch of editing tools. So, for example, if I decide, no additional responsibility is actually, I think I want to cut this off, I can go ahead and click on a new branch and say edit and paste it back on, right? So I can move things between branches if I'm aligned. The next thing is that when it comes time to save, I have a couple of different saving options. I can click on document and I can choose save as, and it'll give me several options. First thing is if I don't care if anybody else sees my maps, which is not the case, I could click on save it as a public map on the Mind Maps storage server. Alternatively, if I've logged into Google, Google gives you a set of tools called the Google Drive, and I can click here and I can save it to save the file to my Google Drive, which is what I normally do, and then it's private, and I can open it whenever I want, or I can save it into Dropbox, which I think a lot of people do, and then finally I can save it on my local computer. I'm going to go ahead and say save to save it to the Google Drive. And what it does is it actually saves it on Google Drive with this as the title. So this is the title of my file. Now, that was a very simple mind map, and it probably doesn't, it's just an illustration of how to use the tool more than actually what you can use the tool to do. But now let me go ahead and show you some interesting applications of this particular tool. First thing is, I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to go ahead and start. This is the first one that I've created, which I think is sort of an interesting one to begin with. So a lot of times people are wondering if they should, kind of like the one we just went over, should I, and I was asking, should I be a writer or writer-producer? But a lot of people are asking a slightly different question is, should I start a business? Well, in this particular example, I started, the thought process might begin with, I want to start I think I want to start a business, and you start making lists of what are the benefits. Well, ownership, I can't be fired. I get all the profits from the business and all the losses, of course. And the business, if my feelings change, the business can change, and there's flexibility maybe. And then, of course, I might go on and think about, well, also, if there are other people in my life, I might have to think about them. So I'll drag off a sideline saying, what about my family? Well, I can arrange to work around the kids, and I can pass a business on to them in some sort of future fantasy life. And maybe as I get older and the business changes, instead of worrying about having to put together a retirement, I can just plan to work a lot longer, because a lot of people with businesses really do work almost up until the day they die just because they like it. So those are all positives. And I want to be clear, I didn't think about them in advance. Just as I was working, just as I was pondering the problem and I was working through it in my head, I just started adding branches. So it's a very intuitive process. It's not like you're sitting there thinking, God, what should I write? You're saying, well, I thought about this. I thought about ownership, so I'm going to drag that out. Or I thought about family, so I'm going to drag that out. And I can skip from branch to branch. So as my mind wanders, I can sort of put the items on the list. Well, as I went through that process, of course, when you're starting a business, another thing you end up having to think about is, well, there's a risk in starting a business. What if the business fails? Well, then I'll have a business bankruptcy. And my goodness, I could even lose my personal assets, like I could lose my house or something like that. So drawing this branch out might make you do a double think and think, God, I don't really want to start a business. That's like a lot. Well, what else could I do? Well, I should really think about what else I could do. So, well, I could stay in, what's the alternative? I could stay in this job, get a new job, start a business with a partner, or buy a business. Well, if I stay in this, so this part, you can just literally make a list of all the possible alternatives and then start running them out. For example, stay in the job that I'm at. Well, actually, so stay in the job that I'm at. Well, why stay in this job? Well, they like me. So this one might come last, but, well, they like me. Can I own a percentage of the business? Because that's the thing, is if you're working for a small business and they really like you, they might very well be willing to sell you a percentage of the business because they want to keep you on board and you're getting too expensive and also they might not want to have a competitor. You think, well, I could stay in this job. You think, well, I could get a new job, but you don't know. Will you be safer? You could still be fired. It's just nothing really changes. And you could start a business with a partner, but what happens if you fight? So finally, you might get down to, well, I should buy a business. And it's risky. If I buy an existing business, it's less risky because it's already open and it's already got customers. And it's even less if it's a business I know. And as you go through this whole process, you might actually come up with a solution you would never have thought of normally, which is, well, maybe I should buy a business. And then you might think, wait, I work for a business. I work for a small business. And, and if the owner's getting older, maybe I should think about trying to buy that business. Instead of trying to own a percentage of the business, maybe I should just buy the thing. So what's nice about using mind maps to sort of lay out the options is it's extremely organic. And the bigger the mind map gets, the more options you find. Because instead of what normally happens when you're thinking about a problem, where you think about it and then it gets too complicated and you just get distracted and start working on something else, or you end up thinking about something totally different. The mind map actually remembers for you all of the different options that you've thought of, all the different considerations. And as you're looking at the mind map, it reminds you. So you actually do better thinking because you can actually see your thinking on paper. So let's go ahead and take a look at a different option. And this is a particularly good one, I think, for both writers and actors. But let's go ahead and take a quick. But it kind of works for almost anybody that has to do anything remotely creative. So in reality, I did this mind map for a streetcar named Desire because we already know it, because all of us already know it, But you can do this with any play that you happen to be working on or any project that you happen to be working on, whether you're a writer or an actor. If you're a writer, you can sit down and work through your characters and your plots to make sure that they interact and make sure that the point of your piece, the theme of your piece, is actually being supported, which I'll review in a moment. If you're an actor, it will actually let you take a look at your character and all the other characters in the piece to see how their behavior and the creative choices that you make in presenting a character actually are in response to the behavior of other people in the piece, especially over the course of the whole play. So let's go ahead and just zoom in and take a look at this a little bit. So here we are at a streetcar. Let's start at the very beginning. So if we start here where it says a streetcar named Desire, the first thing, so this is how I would actually do it if I were plotting out one of my own pieces. So I'd start with the title, and usually when I'm in trouble with a piece, and it's not just coming to me automatically, I realize that somehow or other I've lost the thread of the story, the point of the story, the reason I started writing it. So in this particular piece, if my project were called A Streetcar Named Desire, I would probably be saying, what the hell is the story about anyway? Like, why did I even start writing it? And usually I'll be able to remember back that I started writing it because I realized that people's fear makes them do really stupid things. And that people, they're not just stupid, like they don't just screw themselves over. They become cruel and they actively want to hurt other people. Somehow the hurting other people makes them feel better. And then I will a lot of times then think about why specifically I'm writing this. Like most of the time, I think when people are writing movies, they will often have, or even most of the time when people writing movies or writing series pilots and so forth, they're talking about a problem that they've solved, or they're talking about something that they've seen. So if I look at here where it says A Streetcar Named Desire, and I ask, why am I actually writing this? I might say, well, my father was really a mean guy, and my mother never protected anybody. And my sister really was, I was stronger than my sister, more robust, and I ran away. I was able to run away, but she really wasn't. And so she really got the hell kicked out of her, and she ended up really badly. And in some cases, she might have committed suicide. In some cases, she might have just ended up with a really rotten life and died young. But for whatever reason, I usually am writing a piece because it has some relationship to a life, something I've seen in real life. So I write down these two things. And in doing so, I realize that for good or ill, that really I've kind of written my family into my characters. And I don't want to use my family's actual names, but I do know that I've got a brute and a wimp and a sister who is basically a victim. So then what I can do is actually go make a map of the characters, right? So, for example, I might take a look at the brute, and I might actually sort of document what's true about the brute, both the good and the bad. And the first thing is that if we're talking about A Streetcar Named Desire, the brute actually is paying all the bills. People always make it seem like Stanley Kowalski is such a rotten guy, but if you think about it, he is paying all the bills for his wife and his the sister-in-law that comes to visit, and his wife's having a baby. And it's not like the guy's living high on the hog. I mean, they're just living in that little 2-room apartment that this sister's basically visited herself upon. So he pays all the bills. He is childish, what matters to him is whether or not he's going to win, he's going to get to play poker, or whether dinner's on the table, and whether or not he gets to have sex regularly. But what is also true is that he truly, truly, truly loves his wife, and that he very much wants to control his home. He goes really ballistic when he can't control what's going on around him. He can't have the radio on. All of these things are true. Now, let's talk about the wimp, Stella, who I think always did get off easy in A Streetcar Named Desire. So the first thing is, she really loves her husband. She talks about when she goes away, she just cannot bear to be without him. So she truly loves him, and she ditched her sister, left her behind, didn't care what happened to her, basically, because she did love her husband so much. She doesn't want to work. It's not like that chick went out and got a job. She just mills around the house all day. She's pregnant. I get that, and it is the 50s. I guess that's what we do. But she never did get a job. She's not independent at all. She's basically a child. And she loves her sister, but not as much as she loves her husband. That is absolutely true. So she's not going to be standing up for anybody. So in effect, she's like the mother, like the mother in my house, right? Got the father, you got the brute, and you've got the wimp. And then let's talk about the victim. So Blanche Dubois, it's one of the most poignant things in Streetcar Named Desire is when she talks at length about how watching people die is ugly, and that Stella just abandoned her with all these dying family members, like 4 or 5 of them, and they all made a migration to the graveyard. And meanwhile, this chick, Blanche, was basically holding everything together. She was borrowing against the home. She was working as a school teacher, and in the end, she was alone and all by herself, and she went crazy. And ended up molesting a 17-year-old boy. So, and as well as becoming basically the town harlot. So by the time she's coming to hang out with these people, she's tired and she's crazy out of her mind, and she's scared, and she has nothing and no one except for Stella, who's the wimp in this story, and whatever she can get from Stella's husband, who's that obnoxious brute, which is Stanley. So the victim, she's suffering from PTSD, so she's crazy. She's done things that she can be penalized for, because if the secret gets out about what she's done, she'll be ostracized and thrown out and so forth. She can't defend herself. She has nothing to defend herself with. She can't leave. She can't hurt anybody. She doesn't want to get a job, and this is kind of an interesting thing. Right outside the crucible of that little apartment is, all of New Orleans. So it's really funny because that never seems to come to mind. I could go get a job. I could just go right out there and get a job. I could just work and I could have money. And she's worked in the past, but for some reason, it just doesn't come into her head that she can do it now. So in a way, she's kind of passive aggressive because she's not going to face the world. And she basically has two strategies. One, she hides in the bathroom, or two, she tries to control the household, like she tries to tell Stella what to do. Now, she has a whole bunch of things that she does that are really unfortunate as a manifestation of all of these things, which she lies. She lies because she's done things she doesn't want to talk about, and she's older than she's supposed to be. She hides. She looks for a man to control, which is that guy Mitch, and she makes her sister do things, and she insults and she schemes. And so notice that if you take a look at all of these things, what the three things that these folks have in common is Stanley wants to control his home. The wimp wants to have peace in the home, so to some degree she wants to control the house as well. And the victim wants to control the home or run away. So now I want to be clear that the advantage of laying this out like this is that you can do the thinking over a long period of time. You might start out just doing very basic information about each character and about what's motivating and what's driving them. But over time, you can get pretty complex, and you can actually figure out the specific behaviors that are triggering the good or bad outcomes, like how people are being changed as they interact with one another. And you may also discover sort of side characters that have to exist. The victim wants to find a way to escape from this place, or she either wants to hide in the bathroom, or she wants to control the household, or she wants to find some safe place to be. Well, and in the past, she's sort of been the town harlot, and so she's thinking about, well, how can I protect myself? I need a boyfriend. And she meets Mitch, who's Stanley's best friend, basically, and she thinks, well, I'll just talk to him, and I'll just make him fall in love with me. And she wants Mitch to like her, to treat her kindly, so she starts telling lies. And the lies actually come back to bite her in the butt, because Stanley who she's been insulting constantly, goes and looks up her history and reveals that she's been lying to Mitch. But the important thing is this boyfriend will solve absolutely no problem. He also is completely disinterested in actually taking an adult role in either protecting the victim or in challenging Stanley until the end. If you watch the movie, at the end, I think he punches Stanley, and it was specifically, I think, in response to the need for I think that actually came because when Elia Kazan was directing the piece, he realized that it was just really unsatisfying that Mitch hadn't changed. So he made him change. He made him become somebody who wanted to protect her and to punish Stanley when it was too little and too late. Now, the other thing you might decide, and which I think most people will do, is you'll start thinking about the location where this is set, and you'll figure out what characteristics have to be in the location in order for the script to work. One, it has to be, as I put in this particular example, it's uncontrollable. It's too hot. It's always too hot there, and it's too hot and too small. And those things force these people together, especially since neither of the girls will go get a job. And it makes it so they are forced to confront one another until the worst happens, which is, of course, that Stanley decides to punish Stanley decides to punish Blanche Dubois by raping her, and she goes crazy, and then she gets taken out of the home. So I think whether you're an actor or you're a writer, there's a tremendous benefit in actually being able to walk through your characters and your story and everybody's motivation in one place visually, and to be able to do it over a series of days in a way that you can see easily the relationships between different kinds of characteristics in different moments in the piece. So let's go ahead and take a look at something, another use for this tool. So, and there's going to be kind of a interesting thing here. So if you're a business person, some of these questions will show you how to solve business problems. But more important, and for those of us that are working creatively and who are telling stories or who are portraying characters, for each character you have in a piece, you can actually create these kind of mind maps where you actually think about the problems that they have to solve and all of the options that they would consider. So if you're watching this as a business owner right now, you can think about how you would handle this problem and what your branches might look like. And if you were if you're a writer, actor, or producer, you can think about how you might have a character that you analyze as if you would create the map as if you were them. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at this one. So let's say you've got an aging partner, and you really have to figure out what you think and what your options are in order to decide what to do next, like whether you're going to leave the company or whether you're going to stay. So the simplest thing is probably just to start laying out your options. So in this particular case, I created a branch for option 1, quit and get a new job; 2, quit and start a new business; option 3, buy the company; option 4, buy the customers. And then, because I felt, I think like most people, when you're going to ditch somebody who's an aging partner, you might want to actually put how you feel. So notice that I added an additional stripe here, just out all by its own, called I like Adrian, which basically means my partner's Adrian and I really like him, and here are the things I like him, which is why I don't want to burn him. So when you're creating your mind maps, you can actually put anything out as a branch. You can actually put out how you feel. And in fact, sometimes how you feel is the most important thing. You can make decisions that you think are logical, but if you don't actually feel that you are, if your emotions aren't satisfied, if you don't feel that you've done the right thing, you'll never be happy with that decision. So being able to add decisions to the map of your solution, make sure that those feelings are acknowledged and that they are accommodated in the plan you create. So once you've actually, so in this particular case, I drew out I like Adrian. He started the business, invited me in, always paid me on time and so forth, treats me like a son. But then I can subsequently draw out, you know what, Adrian's a rotten partner. I can make more working someplace else. I could start my business with his unhappy customers because he's so bad at business, people hate him. He doesn't do the books right. He's too old to work like he used to. He doesn't want to hire anybody, but even though he would if I quit. And he needs to retire, but he won't because he can't afford to. So interestingly enough, even though I started by putting out the options first, these emotional things actually are really important because I don't want to burn Adrian, and yet I don't want him as a partner either. And that will have an impact on things. So if I come out here and I look at option 1, I said, well, what's the positive thing about quitting and getting a new job? Well, more money and less hassle. But the negative thing is Adrian goes out of business and I don't own anything anymore. So I used to have a business and now I don't. And that's kind of a step down. Option 2, quit and start a new business. Well, the upside is that I own 100% of something new, and I can steal Adrian's customers because he's got a lot ready to leave. But Adrian would really hurt, and in fact, Adrian may sue me because he may think that I've betrayed him by taking away his business. So let's look at option 3 because that one sucked. I could buy the company, but the thing is, I don't want anything to do with Adrian's debt or his bad books. But on the upside, Adrian would have money to retire. So let's look at option 4. What happens if I just buy Adrian's customers? So he's got customers that are ready to leave and he's got happy customers. What if I just say, look, you go out of business but you tell all of your customers to come work with me. They already know me. I'll have an entirely new business. You can pay off all of your bills, hide whatever you want from the IRS, and I'll just be gone. And I get all the customers, he gets money, and my company starts fresh. So the interesting thing is in running these options out through the mind map, you can actually think of options that you would not might not otherwise have really given serious consideration to, or you might not even have thought of. I think if you ask most people how to handle an aging partner, they're going to say there's only three options, which is quit, quit and get a new job, quit and start a new business, or buy the company. But there is a fourth option: just buy the customers. You don't have to buy the company to get the customers. You just say, tell Adrian, tell your customers to come to me. So, and as I just ran through this, as if it's a business person making the decision, if I were writing a screenplay and I had a character who had an aging partner who he had to get rid of, he might go through this thought process as well. And it might say something about his character if he never actually came up with option number 4, because that might mean he was not very good at business. Let's go ahead and take a look at another mind map. Now, this is kind of, I think, this is kind of an interesting one. What should our failing startup do? And this mind map is useful, type of mind map is useful for anybody who has to collaborate with anybody with whom they are having arguments, right? So a lot of times when you're working with a partner or a close collaborator, whether it's on a screenplay or on a production or as a company owner, whenever you have to actually work with one or more people, you're going to invariably reach points where you have the longer you work together, the more likely you are to hit big times where you cannot agree. You just absolutely cannot agree. Well, using the mind map, using this mind map tool, either working together side by side or with each of you adding elements to it independently, or even if you're forced to, you personally just listening to what the other guy has to say and then putting his information on the mind map, you'll be shocked to discover how much easier it is to find points of common interest and points of where you agree. Because a lot of times we don't listen, we don't really understand everything that someone is saying, and we don't also look for where we can't really easily see where we have areas of common agreement, and this technique solves that problem. So let's go ahead and sort of zoom in and we'll see. So what I'm positing is we have a company that's a startup and it's failing, and let's assume that there's two partners. There's Ted, see, look, here's Ted, and there's Johnny. Now Ted says, so then they have two completely different points of view about what should happen next, okay? So they got a failing startup, company's going down, a brand new business, and they're trying to figure out what to do next. And we can pretend it's a software company. So let's say they got together and they're developing an iPhone app, and they got a bunch of money at the beginning and now it's gone, and they don't know what to do. Well, let's see what Ted has to say. Ted says, we need to confirm that we can get customers with this app and that they're going to want what we develop, right? We need to confirm customers and that they want, we need to confirm that customers are going to want what we plan to sell, so we can be sure that whatever we produce is going to be successful. So what he wants to do is to take the app and go out and try to get pre-orders. Like, let's say the app is supposed to be a coupon app, kind of like LA Byte or something like that, or like sells restaurants or something like that. If you can get 20 or 30 restaurants to say, yeah, we'll use your app to schedule deliveries or whatever, then you know you're going to have a successful app. But if you show your sample app to people and you don't get any restaurants signing up, then you know maybe you have to change it. So Ted's saying, well, let's try to get pre-orders. Let's test sample products. Let's just go ahead and run ads for products we don't have. We'll just put it up on Facebook, create mock-ups, and run them to our website. And if people click on the ads, then at least we know they like the promise that we're going to make them. Finally, Ted says, look, we have to actually find out what people want before we invest any more time and money, because we've already blown through $100,000 not achieving anything. Whereas, and he may also say, look, I don't want to get I don't want any more investors. Somebody gave us $100,000 already, and I think that guy's really demanding. He's always wrong. He can sue us because he can say, look, you guys lied to me about what you were going to do and how you were going to do it. And we could have as many investors as we want, but they're not actually going to they're not going to make it so we have a successful product. And if we have to, instead of getting investors, let's just work part-time. So instead of working full-time on this startup, we'll just go ahead and I'll get a job and you'll get a job and we'll just work after hours. So now that's what Ted thinks we should do, right? Ted doesn't want investors. He just wants to approach customers. So now let's go take a look at Johnny. Johnny, he's like the money guy. He says, look, the problem is we just ran out of money. So we just need to get more money. And like you hate investors, but I like them because investors a lot of times, they have business experience and good opinions. Like they actually have good ideas because they've been successful in the past. And Johnny may say, we need to create a product before we can sell it. We can't just go out and sell snake oil, sell pictures to people and tell them we're going to build something. We actually have to have a working version of what we want to sell and build it completely before we actually go approach customers. You shouldn't advertise if you don't have a product, and sample products are a waste of time because they're not the finished thing. And anyway, customers aren't going to give us money up front. Why would they? So what does it care what's it matter if we have people who say they want to do business with us if they're not going to actually give us money? So then what you might decide to do is put to highlight the things that both people agree on. So Ted and Johnny may both agree we need money to stay in business. And Ted and Johnny may both agree that sometimes investors who actually happen to be in our industry, like if we're in the restaurant business, they're restaurant people, they do bring good experience and ideas. And they might agree that it is a good idea to get pre-orders because if we could get people to actually give us checks for something, that would be good. And maybe it would be good to find out what we actually need to sell before we invest time and money. So then together you can actually think about, is there anything that lets you do those things that you agree on? And one thing you might want to do is think about, at this point, connecting these dots may make you think, maybe we can get a customer who's also an investor. Maybe there's somebody who's in the industry who needs something, who doesn't have a good app. And we can go to him and say, this is the app we're developing. Will you become an investor? And then you can actually use it to help your current business. And then if we design the solution to make them happy, maybe we can make anybody happy who is in the same industry. So as you take a look at this, you can see that in almost any situation, if you actually document both people's, or however many, if you document both people's points of view, the disagreeing partner's point of view, and you actually then go through and highlight the areas where you actually do agree, you can take the elements that you agree on and you can use those to actually build a way forward that you might not otherwise have seen, right? So now let's go ahead and take a look at a kind of a common personal problem that people have to think about. And this one might be sort of the most appropriate to be thought of as somebody that was an actor who is trying to think about what they personally should do next. And this map is mostly sort of about feelings and time. And I think almost everybody in the creative industry, every time they finish a project, good or bad, has to stop, take stock, and figure out what to do next. So let's just sort of take a look. So if the question is, what should I be working on? Well, the first thing is, the actor may think, I should be doing stuff that pays. So either I should be doing paying roles in film or commercials or even plays if there are such things. And if I'm not doing that, I should be auditioning for paying work. And I should review the trades every day. And I should only take jobs that pay, because otherwise I'm going to go broke as an actor. It's getting paid that really matters. But the truth is that I can't fill all of my days just going on auditions because there's just not enough work for me to do. And I can't always get work that pays. So what do I do then? Well, I can do stuff that makes me get seen correctly. Like, I might decide, well, I always get cast, I'm a 6'6" man, and I always get cast as like the heavy or like the brute. And I don't want to get cast like that anymore. I mean, I never get cast as Othello, and I never get cast as I just never get cast as smart people, only stupid people. But there are other actors that are my size who get cast well. So I need to make sure that if I'm not getting paid, that I'm going to be any work I do on the side, I make sure that I'm only in leading roles, and I'm only working with good people, and only working on projects that are actually going to get finished, and only on projects that are going to get promoted well, and only if I can confirm all of this from the start. Because I think deciding these things about a collaboration before you invest in the time in doing the collaboration, making sure that all this is true before you start, will ensure that the time isn't wasted, which is a really huge problem with a lot of creative collaborations. If the project never gets distributed, or it makes you look bad, there's really no point in doing it. And if I can't do that, then I can do my own projects. Like I can do little less than 1 minute movies that I can put on Facebook as advertisements, or I can produce little no budget projects. So either I'm going to work collaboratively with people under a certain set of conditions, or I'm going to create my own projects. And then finally, if I'm not doing that, what else should I do? Because I can't always be producing or collaborating on stuff that doesn't pay. What's the least I can do? Well, I think I'm going to do readings, because I meet producers, writers, and actors. And readings are pretty good. You just basically turn up for like a couple of hours. Maybe, the time, a couple of hours, maybe I'll read the script and then make some notes and then appear for a couple of hours to do the reading. It's just a good way to network. And then I might sum everything up by saying what's most important is I stop wasting time and I stop doing stuff that makes me feel discouraged. So this is basically what a creative person might create in order to feel less out of control of their career. And now I just want to sort of briefly show you. It's interesting, the mind mapping software that I talked about, mind maps. If you take a look at it, you'll see that you can actually create pictures. You can actually insert pictures, and you can also put links into each. You can also put links into in as well. So you can actually make really very beautiful presentation tools. So using the mind map software. And let me, if I go ahead and I bring this up again, I'll just quickly show you how to do that. So for example, I can click on any field, and then at the bottom of the screen, I can click on Inspector, and I can click on Image, and it will let me add an image. Just double click here and it'll let me click on any image and stick it into the thing. Or let's see, edit URLs. Or I can actually say, right. And so if I click, you see this little blue thing, it's a link. And when I click on it, in theory, it's supposed to like break up. I can click and it'll actually show me the links here, and I can go ahead and say, oh, okay. So if you want to make it so that you add information to each node where people can find more data, you can just go ahead and use the link button or the picture button. And I mentioned in passing, there's this weird, is it attachment that does it? This attachment thing lets you write a book. You could write a book of things. This could be a book. And it's basically just a document that gets attached to the file. So each one of these little nodes, each one of these little nodes can actually have like a whole bunch of text, a picture, and a link attached to it. All right, cool. So that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to address today. And the only thing I guess I would like to spend just a couple of seconds on is if I go to, if on your computer you're not already using Chrome, you can go to Google. I'm going to just go ahead and leave this page. I don't care about that guy. I can say install Chrome. So even in whatever browser you're using, you can say install Chrome. And when you click, there'll be literally, you'll just say go to download, and it will install Chrome on your computer. And you can install Chrome Mind Map Maker. And there's actually a link in the docs. See, it says Mind Map. So when I go here, it would literally there'll be right now, it's already installed on my computer. There's not an install button, but see where it says visit website? Normally there's an install button next to it. So once I've installed Chrome, I literally just say, go to find the mind mapping software and choose install, and then it will just install it. And whenever I want to launch the mind mapping software, I just click on the little rainbow up here in the corner, and I say mind map. And then I can say go to Mind Map Maker. Cool. And then, actually, I guess I should show you how to open a map, because that might be handy. So I click on Document, and I think I can say Open. And I could say Open on Google Drive. And it will it'll list all of the documents, and I can just literally double click on them. Okay? So it's a very straightforward process. And then I guess the other thing I should show you is the notes for this thing. So click. So the notes that you'll download for this event cover all of the things that we've just talked about. And it'll show you, has links that let you show you how to install, and it has a quick little primer on what the user interface items are. Like, here's how to open apps, and here's how to save, and the document button where you can save things, and the buttons down here at the bottom, like the navigator and the inspector, and then how to zoom and pan. And then I included a mind map tutorial, which will walk you through actually creating your first mind map. It tells you how to click and drag. It literally just walks you through the process. It's like 26 pages of how to draw a map. And then at the bottom, I actually included a host, all of the maps that we used that I showed you in the event. So you can sort of think about, you can study them and sort of figure out how you might want to approach solving your own problems. But I think the most important thing to realize is that there's really no wrong place to begin. It's wherever you start a mind map, if you're not asking the right question at the beginning, as you work through the process, you'll discover that you'll add the other pieces. So if I said I was having problems in the streetcar named Desire example, I said, look, Blanche Dubois' character is just really bad. It's not working for me. If I started documenting Blanche Dubois' personality and her conflicts and so forth, before long, I would literally have to backtrack to who are the other characters in the piece. And that would eventually make me think about, why I'm writing the story, and why, and what I saw in real life that made me want to write the story in the first place. So you can't really start at the wrong point when you're creating one of these things. You really can start at any point in the process. You can start with whatever question seems to make sense to you at the time. And in answering the question and documenting your options and documenting your feelings, you will end up at the right place, because that's just as long you're in a position to see sort of where your thoughts are leading visually, and it makes it much easier for you to make cognitive leaps that would otherwise be really hard. So I guess the last thing I should mention is that my name is Nancy Fulton, and you can reach me at nancy.fulton@yahoo.com, and you can find these materials at knowbetterfriend.com. I have a list of past meetup event documentation, and this is one of these things that's on that list. And then if you'll get full details. If you register for the event, you'll get full details. Or if you attended the event live, you would get, if for whatever reason I covered mind mapping in a live class, you would get instructions on how to download these materials. You could always email me if you have questions or need help. I have consulting rates, but I'm always up for a good 5-minute question. I usually answer those kinds of things right off the cuff. So thank you very much, and I hope you have an excellent day or evening, whichever one you happen to be having right now.